have a discussion on a utility function and talk about, if you are given a utility function, how to derive the proportion of income spent on certain goods. So it looks like this, if you remember that. So Ux1, x2 is equal to x1 to 2's power and s2 to 3's power. This is, the purpose of this is just to give you some exercise, but I want to show you that because we are talking about economics, so it is very specific. If we talk about economics, it has to make sense. So as a matter of fact, this kind of utility function doesn't make sense. So we have a general form. We say u of x1 and x2, x1 to a's power and x2 to b's power. Okay, we say you can have something like this, right? And in terms of the proportion of income you spend on x1, you will be a over a plus b, and the proportion of income that you spend on x2 will be b over x plus b. Okay, so if this one doesn't make sense, what kind of utility function will make sense? First of all, marginal utility has to be positive, okay? Marginal utility has to be positive, right? If it is not positive, why bother buying something? But in terms of production, it can be different because, there is a law of diminishing marginal product. That means the more of factors of production, such as labor or capital you employ, sometimes you get negative marginal product. But for marginal utility, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so first of all, you have to have mu greater than 0. So what does that mean? In terms of this, let us say mu x1, right? Mu x1 will be equal to a times a x1 to a minus 1's power, okay? Right? So this has to be positive. So what does that mean? A has to be positive, okay? A has to be positive. And for this utility function to have a maximum, okay, maximum, what does that mean? That means the second order condition, that is the differentiation of mu x1 has to be negative, right? So first order condition, f prime, okay, this is marginal utility. It has to be greater than 0, right? And for the utility function to have a maximum, okay, the second order condition has to be f prime greater than 0, f double prime less than 0, right? So you have, dx1, dmux1 will be equal to a times a minus 1 and x1 to a minus 2's power, right? Because here it is a minus 1, and you differentiate it again. So it is a minus 1 here. It will be x1 to a minus 2's power and times x to b. This one has to be less than 0. So what does that mean? That means a has to be less than 1, greater than 0, and b will be the same thing, less than 1, greater than 0, right? Because here it has to be positive, and here it has to be negative. Okay, so basically, even though we can, have you do exercise something like this, but as a is not quite right. Okay, so if you have a utility function like this, a and b has to be greater than 0 and less than 1. So for this, doesn't make much sense, but it's just in terms of exercise. Okay, now let's get back to the textbook discussion and let's look at the PPT here. Okay, so last time we talked about the issue of education. And for American people and Taiwanese, basically that's the same thing. But the system is a little bit different, right? So in terms of Taiwan, if you look at schools, right? For elementary school, middle school, junior high, and senior high, right? Sometimes the parents prefer to get kids to go to private school. Okay? Why? Private school, they have much more resources. Of course, it's much more expensive, right? So if you attend a public school, elementary, junior high, senior high, generally it's less than, $4,000 a semester. And it includes meal, right? Includes meal. But if you go to a private school, how much is that? Xie Xinyu, can you give me some number? If you go to a private elementary or junior high, senior high, whatever, what generally will be the tuition? How much would you need to pay? 60,000? Are you sure? I think it's more than that, right? Zheng Yilin, private school, elementary, junior high, senior high, give me a number. For example, YDY has one, right? International, elementary. Mr. Zhuang, you like to say? No idea. Zheng Yilin. That's what she said. And it's not enough. No. It's something like $100,000 to $200,000. But they have, it's a very small class, right? Maybe just 10 people, 10 students. And you can do a lot of experiments. I remember that when I was in the middle school, generally, if you study chemistry and physics, there will be a lot of things that you need to do experiment, right? I never done that. But in those private school, you have a lot of fun with whatever materials, experiments. So, but the system in the U.S. Basically, okay, let us look at the other side. This time we talk about university, right? In Taiwan, in terms of school, which one is better, private or public? Suelen. In Taiwan, university. So basically that's the same thing in the US and Taiwan. Private school for elementary, junior high, senior high, private school are much better, right? But what about university? Suelen. University. Which one is better in Taiwan? Private, public? Excuse me? No, we are talking about quality, not tuition. Of course, tuition is the same thing, much more expensive for private one, right? And public one always cheaper. But we are talking about quality. So we know that private school, junior high, senior high, elementary, the quality of private school, oftentimes much better than public ones, right? Okay, so what about university, Suelen? No idea. Su Yizhong. Public school, public universities are better. Why? Why? Zhuang Bo Chao. Why public university in Taiwan are better than private ones? Of course, in terms of cost, it's cheaper, right? But we are not talking about cost. We are talking about quality.
Because the government is helping this
right.
school.
What you said is right. You say helping, right? Basically, that's subsidy. Yeah. Because here, you pay probably just one half of the private school tuition. What about the other half? Where does it come from? Government subsidy, right? And in terms of professor, that's the same thing. Because most of my, if my salary is going to be covered by your tuition, that's nonsense, impossible, right? So government subsidizes a lot. And so professors got higher pay. Well, not really higher pay, but it's more stable. Because for private school, if you don't have enough students, right? If the enrollment goes down, their salary will be in trouble, but not for the public ones. Okay, but really imagine that. Even though some of you, did not go to private elementary school for your junior high, senior high, whatever, but still, if you want to get more education, how would you do that? Okay, So, Wang Xiuhui, if you want to get more education, if you go to school, right, an elementary school, but you want to learn more, how can you do that? Exactly, cram school, right? So this case, okay, if you look at this case, it's not quite the situation in Taiwan, okay? Basically, if you are the parents of American people, right? If you choose a public school, so that's the amount of education you choose, okay? That's it. But basically in Taiwan, if you choose a, public school, what else can you do? You can go to 科建, right? What else? 和家人. Whole lot of choices. And you can also take music classes, right? To KHS, So basically the situation we talk about here in America doesn't quite apply to Taiwan. But in America now there's something quite popular. In Japan they have Kongun. And the same thing in US, they have Kongun. So what's Kongun? Wang Jingyu, what's Kongun?
Common.
It's Japanese.
I have no idea.
You have no idea. 中国章 Kongun. So it's this. And also, suppose you want to go to universities, you want to get to a better one, right? So they have SAS test preparation. And if you are a university student, want to go to graduate school, you have to prepare for GRE, graduate record examination. They also have this kind of prep school to help you prepare for the test. So anyway, let's get back to the situation here. So basically, this is the choice you're going to have. So a family that sends its child to a private school. So what does that mean? This is the units of education, right? So if I send my children to a private school, it means I consume more education services, right? Okay, so I can choose that. But suppose you send your kids to a public school, so basically that's what you have, okay? And so there's a debate, okay? Just like in Taiwan, so even though you come to our school, a public one, it sounds like the quality is much better than other places. But can you tell me which public school is better? Lin Yuxiang, can you tell me? So many public universities, right? Is there any competition between them? Not quite. So which one is better, Lin Yuxiang?
学校
Right, which one is better?
还好
Right, it's because of the recruitment, right? They enroll, the best student. But let us say you have Taikeda, right? Gaokeda and Taizhongkeda, right? And our school. Which one is better?
台哥
Nonsense. Of course, it's NKUST, right?
Yeah.
You got it? Because of me. Anyway. So that's a problem, right? That's a problem. I'm talking about a serious issue. Because the government subsidizes the same school. Okay? But how, in terms of public school, private school, you know that. Because funding of private school all comes from tuition, right? And, honestly, the boss of the private school, what's their intention? They want to make money, right? So if you go to private school, the classroom is smaller, the dormitory is smaller, right? The campus is smaller, but you come to public school because of subsidy, everything is bigger. Even the restaurant is much better, right? And so, but I'm talking about public school. So I actually has written an article and published it in the Liberty Times. I'm talking about, giving voucher to you, okay? Because you choose your school, right? So if everyone chooses a good school, of course that good school are going to get a lot more funding because more students, right? And because of that, the quality will actually be better. But there's actually no competition among public school. So really, honestly, if you talk about our school and the other school, the range of the score, okay, of your entrance exam is actually very small. So, I mean, voucher indeed has merits because it encourages people to build reputation for the school because, of course, the issue is funding. Okay, so everyone, so now what happens? And also we need to talk about fairness. Fairness, it is not equal, right? I mean, here, everyone pays tax in Taiwan. Your parents, my parents, they all pay taxes, right? So you should get the same benefits. But it turns out that if you go to private school, you get less subsidy, right? But you come to public school, you get more subsidy. How come? So there should be no reason for that. So the points that I mentioned in the article is that you need to have competition among public schools. So how to get that? Basically the same thing here. So you need to have, for American people, you need to have competition between public school and private school. And in Taiwan, you should have competition among all those public universities. And so now the government subsidizes the school. So instead of subsidizing school, the government should subsidize the students. So the government should give you, let us say, whatever subsidy is going to be $100,000 to you, and then when you choose school, right, you give that subsidy to the school. And so the school has more funding. And of course they can hire better professors like Yang Deyuan, right? And so give you a better education. Okay, so let's move on. Got it? Okay. Of course, people may change their taste. We talked about this before, right? We talked about cash in grant and also grant in kind, in-kind subsidy and cash in grant. So after you consume more education, you may change your taste. So that, in this case, because the parents may have consumed enough education, so they change their taste. So as I say, when the indifference curve is steeper, it prefers the goods on the horizontal axis. And this one, it turns flatter, right? Flatter means it prefers the other goods rather than education, okay? Okay, so let me read a little bit here. So it said, non-economic issues and concerns, okay? So, if you are the Democrats usually don't like vouchers, okay? Because, the teachers, probably I'm going to say sorry about that, but, some teachers don't like competition, right? And they have unions. So what is unions? Teachers have unions. Hong Taichuan, what's a union? U-N-I-O-N, what's union? Chen Zishuai, what's union? Suito, union.
工会
Right, exactly. So teachers want particular rights. So somehow, if you have competition, right? So some students may move out of my area. So I'm going to lose income, right? So I'll be in trouble. So for Democrats, generally they don't quite like the idea of vouchers, okay? Because, that's one of the reasons. It's controversial, okay? Let me honestly tell you, this is controversial, but generally it's like that. And, Republicans, they are pro-business and pro-competition, and so they like that way. But, when I was in the US, I met some friends, they are teachers in the elementary school. When I mention vouchers, they just hate me, Anyway, but, that's some of the country. The other issue is, as I have told you before, what's that? Well, it is at the tip of my tongue. Abortion, okay? Abortion is another controversial issue. Don't say that with your friends. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. Another one is religion. So sometimes you can see people want to say something about themselves. And so some people have a mark in their car. So it's a fish. Sorry. Okay? This actually has something to do with the religion. And then some other people, they draw legs here. What does that mean? That means evolution. What's evolution? Evolution. Yes. Unfortunately, this is actually science, right? But in the US, it is also very controversial. So if you have a mark, if your car has a mark of fish, means that you are Christian. And here means you are against Christian. So anyway, kind of hard to understand why American people would debate anything about that. But anyway, so let me read this to you. The public is divided on the issue of school vouchers, with approximately 33 to 50% in favor. Okay, so you look at this, it's not majority. Okay, if it is majority, it has to be over 50%. Okay, but their opponents concerned about a reduction in the Constitution guarantee of a separation of church and state. Okay, why? Because many private schools are, religious school, and usually that's Catholic or Christian. Okay, so there are a lot of issues about that. That's because in Taiwan, you and I all look the same, right? In the US, you have Muslims, okay, you have Jewish people, of course you have Asian, right? And so many, and even for Christians, you have some, quite different groups. Some called Quakers, some called Presbyterians, some called evangelical. Oh, gosh, I really have no idea what they are about. So, but in Taiwan, which group is the majority? Of course, the majority is Buddhism, right? Or ancestor worshippers. But the other, we are talking about Christians. Okay, the majority will be Presbyterian. What's Presbyterian? Presbyterian, it is called this. Presbyterian. Okay, in Taipei, there's a very famous hospital, and he belongs to this. 2 words. The first one is horse. What's that hospital? Yes, exactly. Okay? Okay, let's move on. It's quite interesting. For Christians, they don't worship idols. Okay, so like in Taiwan, we have 土地公, Mazu, right? All these guys is nonsense to the Christians. But I'm not sure his English name, but anyway, let's say Ma Jie, right? When he came to Danshui in Taiwan, he actually went to temples, and people got curious why, foreigners would worship our gods. So anyway, okay, let's get to opponents are concerned about a reduction in constitutional guarantee of a separation of church and state. That's the reason I told you all this story, right? Okay, it's controversial, and now probably less than 30% of the people regularly go to church. So the second point, that only the poorest of the poor will be left in public school. So this is one of the key issues, okay? Because all the funding go to some good school or better school, right? What's left? That would be really poor quality, right? So they worry about equality, okay? So the Republicans care more about competition, but some people care more about, like Democrats, right? Equality. So anyway, it's controversial. Okay, the last point, students, teachers, and administrators of public school will see a large decrease in their utility. You know, for this school, right, efficiency counts. We are a big school. If the enrollment is not, let us say just 80%, what does that mean? There will be efficiency loss. So anyway. Okay, let's get to the second part. The pricing of wireless cellular phone services. Okay, but it is quite different now. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, when you sign up a plan, okay, you have to have in how many free minutes, okay, and after that, it will be per minute charge. Say, $6 per minute or $8 per minute. Of course, the company, okay, the phone company encourage you to call more, right? So if you have, let us say, 1,000 free minutes, then the rate will be lower, okay? So let us say, if it is 500 free minutes, the rate could be $8 per minute, okay, after that. But if you sign up for 1,000 free minutes, it could be just $5 or $4 per minute. You got it? It is totally different from the other reality. So let us talk about electricity charge. Okay. Any one of you have paid for electricity? Nope. What's the rate for electricity? I think it is from 0 to 100. What's the rate? I remember that it's something like 2 point something, okay? But the higher you consume, what happened to the rate? Goes up, right? Okay? Let us say $3 and, so this is different because we encourage people to save electricity, right? We encourage people to save electricity. But this is different. Phone companies encourage you to call more, right? So that means the more you use your phone, people want to have the marginal rate going down, okay? So let's look at the other diagrams. Okay? So what's going on here? So you have several choices, okay? If you choose a minimal plan, so if that means your use of the phone is not quite as extensive as people would like, okay? So this guy, use just a little, right? So you see this one, okay? This slope is much steeper, right? And then you got a flat rate, okay? You got a flat rate. But suppose you call more than that. Usually, that's what the phone company would like you to do. So this one, you see that? The slope is flatter, right? The slope is flatter. It means that if you just sign up for a basic plan, okay, your per minute rate will be very high. But suppose you can sign up a lot more, right? Then your per minute rate will be much flatter. And of course, let us say you are a businessman, you will call more. But what happened now in Taiwan? What's our phone rate in Taiwan? Wang Zaibing. What happens in Taiwan? Do we have this kind of situation? Yes or no? And what would that be? Zhen Hongxi. What's the situation in Taiwan? Xie Xingyou, what's the situation in Taiwan? Right, so that's a flat rate. Flat rate. No matter how many minutes you call, is what is flat. Okay? But still, if you make a phone call, there is a charge, right? So, Xie Xingyou, how do you make phone calls now? How do you make phone calls? Do you call the number 09 whatever? Or you use some other programs, app? Right, you use app to call, right? Because in that case, the charge is through the internet, and internet basically is free to you. I mean, it's flat, right? It's a flat rate. And so basically, I believe most of you, if you're gonna call your classmates, what do you use? You don't use phone number again. You use line ID, because that will be totally free, okay? And the other is called text messaging, right? This is quite popular in the US, text.